Hello everyone, welcome to Daily Current Affairs Analysis of Shankar IAS Academy, and we will be discussing the current affairs of 27th of August 2025. So before going into the discussion, I am going to give you two exciting newses, and one is we are starting the new pre-storming batch on 4th of September 2025, and also that is tomorrow 28th of August 2025 we are having orientation session by Mr. Satyakrishnan and faculty of Shankar IAS Academy. Please do attend the orientation session. So we will discuss today's topics. So first is the invasive species. So what is the cost of invasive species, and are we ignoring it? And specifically talking about the plant species, what is the impact of plant invasive species? All these things we will be discussing. Then we will be talking about what is Cor and Headline Inflation and how are we going to address it. Then we will be talking about ICAR and that is Indian Council for Agricultural Research and Arecanut. So what is the relationship between the organization and the plant species, and we will be discussing more about that. And then we will be discussing the India-Japan relationship and what is with the correct context. Next we will be talking about certain topics in the Prelims Focus. We will get into the first topic, invasive species. In India, are we underestimating the cost of dealing with the invasive species? Before going into this, we should know what is an invasive species, a very important topic in terms of environment. So what is an invasive species? So invasive species are species that are not native. So they are not native to that particular geographical location, but due to some reason they have been brought to that geographical location. And this is generally we call them as exotic species. But are all the exotic species invasive? That is not true. So there are certain conditions for a species to be considered as an invasive species. Point number one is the rate of consumption of resources is very high. That is, they start consuming whatever is present, water or food availability, whatever it is, they start consuming at a faster rate. Second is the rate of reproduction is also very high. Like when they reproduce, more number of offsprings are brought to the ecosystem. This is leading to increased in competition. Apart from these two, there is one more important point, which is it should be highly resilient. That is, the new environment's change should not affect the species. So the three conditions will lead to a species becoming an invasive species. So this invasive species will disrupt the native environment. So that is the impact. So dealing with the invasive species itself will bring some issues. It is very costly, and this news is specifically talking about how the plant has emerged the most economically impactful invasive species. So invasive species can be plants, animals, can be a fungi, but this article specifically speaks how plants can be more invasive, more economically impactful. That is the topic we are going to discuss today. So they are saying that depending on the cost of management, 926.38 billion US dollars from 1960 to 22, that is the plants. So plants what is the amount we are spending in terms of dealing with the invasive species from 1960 to 2022, they are saying we have spent almost 926.38 billion US dollars. And then comes the arthropods. Arthropods are nothing but insects. So in the common term, we have to talk about their insects. And then comes the mammals. So what happens? We will see. An invasive species is a species that is non-native. So these are the conditions, important conditions. So they are non-native in nature, that is alien to the ecosystem under consideration, and whose introduction is likely to cause economic or environmental harm. So here economic or environmental harm, which means that there is a high competition. So this high level of competition will lead to loss of biodiversity. So they will start dominating and the loss of biodiversity will take place. So invasive species can be both plants and animals, and also other living organisms like microbes, fungi. They can be of any nature. So what is a global finding? So study published in Nature, Ecology and Evolution using InvoCost database. So, this is a public database, and this database records the economical cost of biological invasion, because see, generally when we talk about economical cost, we cannot bring everything into number, but when we are talking about this invasive species, here this particular database is trying to quantify the impact of invasive species. So, invasive species, it can be a plant and animal, it has caused almost 2.2 trillion damage US dollars of damage worldwide from 1960 to 2022. So, this can be underestimated, they say it has been underestimated. That means, what does this mean is that, so what we are seeing 2.2 trillion damage, they are saying is less, it might be more than what is represented. That is the meaning of underestimation. They are saying that it can be like 16 times more compared to the earlier estimates, 16 times, which means 2.2 trillion, it can be even 16 times more, we might not know, because as I told you, trying to quantify is not easy, because the impacts, loss of water, how can you quantify the loss of water? So, what they are saying is, what we are thinking is the impact of invasive species is actually underestimated. It might be more than what we think, that is what they mean. So, what is the potential impact? What can be the impact? What can happen in future? So, Europe was found to have the highest potential impact, absolute terms of 1.5 trillion, that is 71.45% of global cost of the invasive species is seen in the Europe, they say, and followed by, then comes the North America, then third place Asia, Africa and Australia and Oceania. See, Europe, this can be an important question. Europe has the highest impact, that is 71.4% of global impact is in the Europe. Asia stands third. So, what are the major invasive species and their impacts? We will see. Plants are the costliest, as we discussed, 926.38 billion. These and all you can write it in mains, very good introductions. These are how invasive species will affect biodiversity. If there is a question, you can write this as an introduction by itself. As we discussed, plants stands at the top, then comes the arthropods, that is insects, then comes the mammals. So, what is a major reason for invasive species? It is linked with trade, travel and globalization. So, trade, I will tell you one of the important example. Okay, so there is a plant called as polythenium. So, this polythenium is it came to India through wheat export. So, when wheat was exported, like we tried to import the wheat from Western nations, there is a plant which came along with the wheat as a weed, and today this polythenium is spread everywhere in our country, and this depletes the soil fertility. It is a major concern. Next comes travel. So, we saw once apple snail, invasive species, which came along with the vessels. So, when we are trying to import and export, we are trying to do a global trade or transportation. So, through travel, some invasive species can be imported. Globalization, one of the best example is pet market. Many people import pets, exotic species, they are very much interested in having them as pets, but without proper maintenance, they release them into wild, and later on they became a important issue with respect to invasive species. So, India's case, so there is no absolute figure, but they are saying that we have a high discrepancy in terms of management cost. We are not aware what is really the management cost, and we have something called as hidden cost. So, we have hidden cost of biological invasions, they say, hidden cost. And reason, India is falling short in terms of document. What is the reason? So, we do not have a proper mechanism to document first. We are not documenting in many places, and also strategically funding biological invasion management is not present. We do not have a proper funding mechanism to approach the invasive management, and we also do not have a centralized data. For example, let us say there is a state which is dealing with invasive species, there is another state dealing with invasive species, but these data lie within the state. Sometimes they are not properly documented. So, as a whole, as a country, what is the money we are spending, what is the cost we are giving in terms of dealing with invasive species, we are not well aware. So, managing invasive species, what we have to do is, we have to understand the invasion dynamics, like from what is the source of invasion, how does it spread, what are the criteria for that species to thrive, how can we address it. Next is prevention and early detection. Next is control strategy. So this works only till the invasion has started. So once invasion has started, we have this control strategy. Then restoration and adaptive management, and finally we have legal and policy frameworks. So these are the ways we are trying to deal with the invasive management. So global agreement, do we have any global agreement related to it? Ballast water management convention. So this is to prevent harmful aquatic organism from one region to another region via ship. Very, very important. Via the ship ballast water. Sometimes the ships can carry the invasive species, as I told you, apple snail. So this convention is to deal with how the invasive species are carried from one place to other place through ships. Then we have Convention on Biological Diversity, CBD, UNCBD, very, very important, UNCBD. It's a legally binding convention, and this will prevent the introduction, control and eradication of those alien species which threaten the ecosystem, habitats or species, because the biodiversity depletion, when we study about biodiversity depletion or any biodiversity based issue, invasive species is a major issue. That is why invasive species always be in prelims or mains question. So you should be very much aware about this topic. So what is the need? We should improve the data collection, we should start doing the tracking of expenditure, and then we should have a proper planned mechanism. As we saw in this, we saw 5 steps, and these 5 steps has to be implemented effectively. Yes, so this is the topic. We'll discuss the next topic. We are going to discuss the next topic, core and headline inflation. There is a debate between core and headline inflation. What has to be considered as a formal way of addressing the inflation? One part of the society, they are saying core inflation is better because it does not include the volatile components. But the other sections, they say headline inflation should be the one we have to address because it affects many people, because more than 50% of the inflation is constituting the volatile components. Ignoring them will not give us a proper picture. So now we have to see what RBI says about it. We'll go into the topic. So first, what is a headline inflation? So headline inflation is the overall inflation rate because it has the consumer price index. So we can see here headline inflation contains a consumer price index and it includes all items. It can be food, fuel, housing, clothing, transport, everything that consumer consumes. That is the headline inflation. But why is it called headline? Is because it reflects the common people's life. Because whatever there is a change in terms of the headline inflation, it directly affects the individuals, it directly affects the consumers, it directly affects the life of people. Like the cost of living will rise. That is why we say that the headline inflation is called because of its impact on the people's life. And how India measures it? India measures it through CPI combined. So the base year is 2012. This base year is important and we are measuring it through consumer price index. And this is a benchmark used by the RBI also for the monetary policy. But what is core inflation? So core inflation is where again it is consumer price index, but we are excluding the volatile components like food and fuel. So what do I mean by volatile components? So volatile component means there is a high frequency of fluctuation, that is it can rise and fall due to various factors which is out of the control of RBI, which is beyond the control of RBI. So this is very much volatile. Even though RBI tries to control it, it cannot control it completely because there are other factors outside the country also playing the role. Like if there is war, if there is any supply value chain based disruption for any reason, there might be a change, and this is out of control of RBI. So that is why core inflation is mostly under the control of RBI, whereas the headline inflation, that is something largely outside the control of RBI. So why is it tracked? So this gives a clearer picture. So why core inflation is giving tracked is because it gives a clearer picture, and it also will give us the understanding of the trends in monetary policy. So in India, food and fuel constitute over 50% of the CPI basket. We know that because the population is high, we consume more energy and also we consume more food. So what happens if we are ignoring the headline inflation? We will not be properly tracking down the inflation, CPI inflation, consumer price index inflation. So now there is a debate whether we should go for the core or headline. So now comes into the picture the flexible inflation targeting. So what RBI is doing now is RBI is keeping an inflation number and they are giving a plus or minus, they are giving a flexible range. So this is what we call it as flexible inflation targeting. So RBI aims to keep the inflation within a specific target range instead of a specific target. But there is a flexibility so that we can handle a temporary shock. So it is not a permanent shock, but we have a buffer such a way that a temporary shock can be handled. So this was introduced in 2016 by amending the RBI Act section 45 ZA. This is very important. How this flexible inflation targeting is brought is by amending the RBI Act in 2016 through section 45 ZA. So what is the current target? What do I mean by flexible target? Let's say the RBI is keeping a target of 4% of consumer price index inflation and they are giving you plus or minus 2, which means that it can go till 6% and not less than 2%. Yes, you heard me right, less than. So if inflation is less, that is also an issue, because if there is a growth, inflation has to be there. If there is no inflation, the country will not grow. So now what happens? We have to have inflation, but the inflation should be under control. That is the concept here. So RBI is having it at 4% plus or minus 2%. So what is the purpose? This will provide a stable price environment so that the business, consumers and investors can plan better. So only when we know what is the cost of living, we can plan our life such a way that if this flexible index is maintained well, we can all plan. It can be a business, it can be a personal life, it can be a consumer based issue, everything can be planned accordingly. So RBI does not aim exactly for 4%, but it has a range, and that range includes a temporary shock. So when we plan including the temporary shock in the mind, so that if there is any situation, we will be able to handle it. If we are very much rigid, what happens? We will be ready only for that. So when there is a situation, sudden situation, out of nowhere situation, we won't be able to handle it. So inflation trends in India we should understand. So 2016 to 2017, this is very important topic, so you should all see. 2016 to 2019, average of 4%, which is within the band. But 2022 to 23, there was something called as bottleneck inflation. So once the pandemic was over and the market opened, there was a very high inflation, and they say CPI rose more than 6% for 5 consecutive quarters. Quarters means 1/4 of a year. 5 consecutive quarters, there was a inflation more than 6%. It was because of pandemic, Russia-Ukraine supply shocks. There was a war, and Russia-Ukraine supplies were impacted. And as of now, it is hump-shaped performance. Hump shape is this is hump shape. So the starting is good, ending is good, but there is some issue in terms of middle years. That is what we call it as hump-based issues. So core versus headline debate. So pro-core, who are all supporting core, they say that food and fuel is beyond RBI's control. So core inflation will better reflect what is the real demand at the world market. An economic survey is suggesting core inflation. But on the other hand, RBI stand, they are preferring headline inflation, and they say that food and fuel constitute more than 50%, and if we are ignoring them, we will not actually address the issue of people. So there might be something called a spillover to the core. So this might lead to, like, if you are not addressing the headline inflation, we might be thinking it is not an issue, but it might spill over, which means it can impact the core inflation also. There might be higher wages, rent, cost also. So former RBI governor Shaktikanta Das, so what the governor is saying is eliminating food from the target is like having no target for the common man. Very, very important. This quote can be used in the means. If the headline inflation is ignored, which means we are not keeping the common man in the mind. So this is not the right way to shape the policies. So that was a former RBI's debate. So should FIT target be reset? So what the RBI is saying is, if we are changing now, it might disrupt the policy, because globally there are so many things happening right now. So this is not the right time to revise the revise the RBI flexible inflation target. So we should wait. The current 2 to 6% band provides enough cushion for shocks. So let's wait. Let's not do anything hastily right now. And price stability needs joint monetary and fiscal coordination. So I'll just explain you what is price stability means. Monetary and fiscal. Monetary is the function of RBI. Here we have all the monetary policies, repo rate, reverse repo rates, CRR, SLR, everything. Fiscal is the responsibility of the government. So here what happens? Import, export, taxation, all these things. So when we want a stable price, both has to work hand in hand. We cannot just blame the monetary policy. So if there is price stability needed, both monetary policy and fiscal policy should be planned accordingly. That is what is the meaning. So when there is a question, which of the following impacts the price of any product, it is not just the monetary policy, it is both monetary and fiscal. Let's say there is a product under very high demand. So when there is a demand, there will be a price increase. So what can be the fiscal policy right now? The government can import the same product so that the demand is met, the supply is increased, the price will become stabilized. This is an example how fiscal policy will help in terms of price stability. So additional facts, there is something called as RBI's accountability. That is, if the inflation is exceeding the tolerant band for 3 consecutive years, the RBI should explain. The RBI should report the reason, and they should also bring in the corrective actions. So international practice is also similar. Many central banks do the same. The function of central bank is to maintain the stability of the currency. That is a function of RBI or any of the central bank. So what is the relationship with the currency and the inflation? When the inflation rises, the value of currency falls down. So the value of currency falls down, everything for us will become costly. Import will become costly, export will be of loss. So what we have to do, we have to maintain the value of currency. So maintaining the value of currency is what we are talking about, the monetary policy. So if the inflation is high for 3 consecutive years, there is a high possibility our currency's value might fall very to a very less range. So the RBI is accountable, and they have to give us the reason and should also work on the corrective actions. This is the function of almost all the central banks in the world. That's why there was a question in 2023 regarding this. And India's flexible inflation target basis, it's based on the recommendation of Urjit Patel Committee. It's based on the recommendation of Urjit Patel Committee of 2014. This can be a question. The next topic we are going to discuss is the Indian Council for Agricultural Research and what they are trying to find out. So recently Arecanut, so we also call it as beetle nut. So what happened is the World Health Organization has classified Arecanut as a carcinogen. So carcinogen are the agents which can cause cancer, specifically the oral cancer. Because in India, culturally consuming the beetle leaf, lime along with the Arecanut is a delicacy, like it has a cultural importance also. But World Health Organization has announced it as a carcinogen. What is the impact of this is, India is the second largest exporter or producer after Indonesia. Now what happens? So this will lead to reduction in the demand. So now the Indian Council for Agricultural Research is doing a research whether the beetle nut or the Arecanut is a carcinogen or not. So that is this article dealing with. So the Union Agricultural Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan has asked the ICAR to work on this right now. So the Indian Council for Agricultural Research is asked by the minister to see whether it is carcinogenic or not, and they are asked to report in a fixed time limit. And also, what is the triggering part? As I told you, the World Health Organization's recent report is a triggering part. So meeting with the union ministers from Karnataka and representatives of Arecanut growing regions. So they had panicked and now they are asking the government to release a report whether it is carcinogen or not. So from the cultural angle, arecanut is very important, not just in terms of consumption. In South India, in these auspicious occasions, like when there is a puja, when there is a function, you have to give gift to someone. So at that situation, you can see they give betel nut along with the betel leaf, and they keep flowers, coconut, and they offer it to God. They offer it as a gift to others. So it just has both the economical importance and also the cultural importance. So the other farmer issues they have discussed, like areolate mildew disease. So this is a disease which affects the arecanut growers, arecanut plants. And what is the they are also asking for a clean planting material. And there are certain illegal imports of arecanut which is affecting the domestic producers, and the moisture issues, and also the price differentials between the small and large nuts. And there are certain viral infections which is causing heavy losses for the government, and they are also asking for the compensation. So arecanut is called as betel nut in India, and its botanical name is Areca catechu. So major uses, it is chewed with the betel leaf, cultural and religious functions. And recent classification, we have discussed that it has been classified as a carcinogen, and this can be a question: which of the following plant is classified as carcinogen, and we will least suspect betel nut or arecanut. So please be very careful when this question comes. And however, context specific studies are ongoing in India to assess indigenous consumption patterns. Next is India's position. We are the second largest producer after Indonesia, as I told you, and the major states. That's why Karnataka is the largest. That's why the farmers from Karnataka, the producers from Karnataka went to meet the minister. So from that you should know that Karnataka is the largest producer. Next comes Kerala, Assam, Meghalaya, Tamil Nadu, West Bengal and Goa. So agroclimatic condition requires a humid tropical climate. That's why it's grown in coastal and river valley regions. So from from this you can try to compare it with the states I have mentioned above. So what is Indian Council for Agricultural Research? It was established in 1929 as Imperial Council. Then later on it was changed to Indian Council for Agricultural Research in 1946, and it is an autonomous organization under the Department of Agricultural Research and Education, DARE. So under the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. This ministry is important. Whether it is an autonomous organization or not is important. Whether it is a statutory body, it's a constitutional body. In that case, it's an autonomous organization which is under the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare. That is something you should know. And it coordinates agricultural education and research, and also develops new crop varieties like genetically modified hybrid varieties, so that they help in terms of sustainable practices also. Very important, the headquarters is in Delhi. So this leads the R&D in agriculture and allied sectors. So next topic we are going to discuss is the India-Japan ties, and the recently Prime Minister is planning to visit Japan and China, and we are going to see what is the impact strategically on our country. So the plan is that the Prime Minister is going to visit Japan and China from August 29. So recently there has been major shifts in terms of global geopolitics after the US President has given more tariffs in terms of the trade. So now this geopolitical issue is bringing shifts in terms of global level. So India-China tie is showing a tentative easing. It's becoming better after the Galwan clash. And now US ties are facing uncertainty due to the Trump's unpredictable stance. And Japan now holds a very important significance. And it's not just bilateral relations, it's beyond that in terms of trade, in terms of other aspects also. We'll see them. So Japan's major investment plan, it's very, very important. Japan is one of the major investor, and recently Japan has promised 10 trillion yen, that is approximately 68 billion US dollars investment in India over 10 years. And what are the focus area they are planning to invest is that infrastructure, manufacturing, clean energy technology, etc., which is the need of the time. An investment in E10 series, Mumbai Ahmedabad bullet train, it's a symbol of technology transfer. the metro trains, the bullet trains, we are taking support of Japan here. And Japan signals long-term commitment. That is very important, because now there is an uncertainty in many of the relationships, India and other relationships. And at this position, a long-term commitment will be of greater support to our country. And this visit, we are expecting it to strengthen it. And the strategic and security cooperation. So we just saw about the investment part. What is the strategic and security cooperation? And we are going to revise the 2008 Joint Declaration on Security Cooperation. And we are also proposing an economic security initiative, specifically in terms of semiconductors, critical minerals, pharmaceutical, clean energy, etc. Critical minerals we just discussed few days before, how much important the critical minerals are. And having an economic security initiative with respect to semiconductor, critical minerals and clean energy, pharmaceutical, all these four are the important criteria, important fields which we have to concentrate on, and this revision will help us a lot. And we are also trying to upgrade the digital partnership in terms of AI, startups, advanced tech, etc. And we are sharing a common vision. What is that? We want free, open, rule-based Indo-Pacific, because we know in the Indo-Pacific region, the control of China or the impact of China's hard diplomacy is something more visible. And Japan and India have a shared vision where we want free, open, rule-based Indo-Pacific region, and this is helping us to work hand in hand. And also PM is planning to attend the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit in Tianjin. This will be a question. What is SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization? Who are the members and where did that take place? It is taking place in Tianjin. After the Japan's visit, Prime Minister will be attending it. And what is the strategic balancing here? India's ability to engage with a trusted strategic partner and a neighboring competitor without allowing one relationship to dictate other, very important. So what does this mean? So what is the issue with respect to tariff? So the president of US is threatening us to give more trade sanction in names of tariffs if we are continuing the ties with Russia. So now what is the underlying issue here? So using the relationship with one country as a bargain, the country is trying to break a relationship with some other country. So here what does this mean? So now we have a relationship with the country one, and that should not dictate what we should do with other countries. So it's a question, it is nothing but questioning the sovereignty. So here this visits and also the strengthening the relationship with Japan will help us balance that without any dictation, free relationship without any dictation with respect to others. And also it signals that India can compartmentalize. With Tokyo, we have economic security, defense, Indo-Pacific. With Beijing, we have tension management, CBM's open communication. So here we are trying to manage both. Like Japan and China, they themselves do not have a very smooth relationship. But still, we are maintaining the relationship with these two countries, even though they are not, good with each other. So that is what is a concept. We can compartmentalize. We will not let one relationship to impact the others. That is what we are trying to convey. And also we are trying to bring in a broader political signal, because Japan diversifies economic footprint while backing long-term cooperation. And this visit of India will be of diplomatic flexibility plus strategic clarity. See the terms: diplomatic flexibility, at the same time we have strategic clarity. So India keeps Beijing channel open, balances UN's predictability, and also deepens ties with Japan. So we are handling everything at once, and still we are doing great. That is what this article speaks about. And coming to the prelims focus, so lithium ion battery recycling technology, so indigenously developed by the Center for Materials for Electronic Technology, CMET, and the nodal ministry is MeitY, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. And yes, so umbrella program under the Mission Life, very very important, Mission Life, people for planet. And because why Mission Life is very important is the Prime Minister himself has come up with this campaign. So it is very important for the examination and also in a political concept. So this will promote circularity compound, circular economy. So here we are talking about the recycling technology, very, very important. So next is exploration of polymetallic nodules. So this has been signed between the Ministry of Earth Sciences and also International Seabed Authority, very, very important. So International Seabed Authority will deal with the sea floor. So what are the minerals that are present in the sea floor? So that is dealt with the International Seabed Authority, and India has signed an MOU with them. And this was signed in 2002 in the Central Indian Ocean Basin, and it is also called as manganese nodules. The polymetallic nodules are called as manganese nodules and are rock concretions formed of concentric layers of iron, manganese hydroxide around a core. It also contains precious metals, very, very important. Why we are trying to explore polymetallic nodule is that it will help us get access to more critical minerals like copper, nickel, cobalt, etc. And this will bring more economical and strategic value to our country. That is why this exploration of polymetallic nodule is very important. Very important, it is under the Ministry of Earth Sciences since we are exploring the ocean floor. Next is ban on import of waste tires. So this is to this is aiming to ensure the safe storage, treatment and disposal of hazardous and other waste in an environmentally sound manner. It is notified under Hazardous and Other Waste Management Transboundary Movement Rules 2016 under the Environmental Protection Act. This we saw with respect to the Basel Convention recently when we discussed mercury 2 days ago. I mentioned about this hazardous and other waste management rules notified under the Environmental Protection Act. Yes, that is here. And the nodal ministry is the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Mission Mausam, so launched in 2025 by the Ministry of Earth Sciences. So it is implemented by the Indian Meteorological Department, National Central for Medium Range Weather Forecasting and the Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology. Yes, so this is to make weather ready and climate smart nation. So Mausam generally means rain. So this mission is to bring weather ready and climate smart nation. So this will help us to predict many things and also avoid many situations which are tough. And finally we are discussing project Mausam. So it is launched in 2014 by Ministry of Culture and implemented by the Indira Gandhi National Center for Arts, New Delhi. So it coordinates and support the Archaeological Survey of India, National Museum as an associate bodies. So what is this project Mausam? This is to revitalize the cultural link and the maritime history of Indian Ocean. So that is the topic. So project Mausam is under Ministry of Culture. So this is Mission Mausam and this is project Mausam. Please keep this in mind. So that's for today. Thank you so much. Please share this video and also subscribe to this channel for continuous updates. Thank you.